The Legend of Zelda. Everyone has popular and unpopular opinions. Let's start on some common ground I have with the fanbase. I personally think the biggest charm of the original Legend of Zelda is that you don't know where anything is. The entire sensation and reward of the game is finding your secrets. Whoever caused the difficulty spike of Dungeon 6, whoever had the balls to hide Dungeon 7 under Subtle Lake, and whoever came up with that meat muncher monster in Dungeon 7 is a real dick move to new players. Hiding Dungeon 8 underneath a simple bush is a really mediocre way to hide a dungeon this late in the game. Dungeon 9 is one of the hardest Zelda dungeons to date, not only because of its ambitious amount of branching pathways, but because the enemies are tough as nails. The Legend of Zelda is the most important game in the entire Zelda library because if there isn't a first game, there is no series to follow it up with. I shiver to think what would happen if Twilight Princess and Oracle of Ages wasn't invented. I honestly feel that Zelda 2 deserves its hate. I appreciate the ambition to try something different from the first game, but it is a brutally hard and unforgiving game. Death Mountain is the black hole of hell when it comes to difficulty spikes. I think you can have an easier time if you know how to defeat the enemies, but that's way easier said than done for the common Zelda player. I think the experience bar is a really cool way to add flavor to the game, but once it starts getting towards the very end, it gets so ridiculously high for me not to bother anymore. Can we all agree that Karok is a bad boss? I think a lot of Zelda players can agree with that. Just hold your shield down and you win. Don't even have to raise your sword. When you die from an instant death from a pit, especially with it being your last life just sucks sometimes. I agree with the majority that A Link to the Past deserves the praise it does. For me, I revel in the difficulty, exploration, and it's one of the few Super Nintendo games I thoroughly enjoy. While I didn't have too many problems with Moldorm, I agree that it's a prime example of bad boss design and forcing the player to grueling backtrack and restart the boss fight. Have to agree with Some Call Me Johnny in the fanbase. A Link to the Past is the most comfortable game to 100% because of its enjoyable pacing, easy accessibility to get to areas, and the rewards you get for your exploration are pretty satisfying. Wait, Link turns into a bunny in the Dark World? Yeah, that is weird. What's it supposed to symbolize him as for an animal? That he wants to hook up with Zelda and make many more Links and Zeldas? Oh, so that's how the Zelda timeline was created. The bosses are definitely unique compared to other games in the series. In my opinion, they hold the trophy for standing out for being the most relentless and the most action-oriented. While I agree the game is underrated, I do understand why Link's Awakening is glossed over. Other than the story, the dungeons, bosses, graphics, and concepts are probably the most underwhelming out of the series in my opinion. Ask yourself, when is the last time you heard someone brag about a dungeon or boss in this game? I think a lot of us can agree the power-up jingle is extremely catchy. That's the popular opinion part. However, some of us think it's cool hearing it over and over again, and some find it annoying when heard over and over again. I'm on the side that finds it annoying. When it comes to buying that bow for the first time, yes, f that shopkeeper. Steal that bow. Farming for nearly 1,000 rupees without knowing to save for it is a dick-tastic move. I think it's safe to say that Turtle Rock isn't a very enjoyable place. The extreme non-linearity in that place can drive a Zelda player to lose his Deku nuts. And finally, is the story one of the most touching in the Zelda series? Absolutely. The Bomb 2 Bowling Alley is my favorite minigame from Ocarina of Time. I've heard many others blow up in agreement over this. And as for the Dampe Gravedigger minigame where we have to farm for that piece of heart, that's pretty tedious and drops a big hole in your pocket for your rupees. Not a fun game. Hyrule Field isn't that impressive of an overworld. Other than the Poe hunting game as Adult Link, I don't know about you, but running for a straight few minutes is not fun. Thank goodness for warps. The Gerudo Training Ground is the most ignored topic talked about in Ocarina of Time. After playing playing through it recently, I now understand why. Though it's difficult, it certainly isn't memorable and you'll forget it in 5 seconds. Ganondorf has a pathetic first form for a boss. Just released your bottled up fury. What makes this funny is that he killed his Phantom in the Forest Temple for being an inferior combatant. But ironically, Phantom Ganon is arguably the best boss in Ocarina of Time for many Zelda players. The Water Temple is the easiest dungeon now in Master Quest because about 25% of it is now blocked off, making it a much more linear experience. The Spirit Temple is the nightmare in this game for players, including myself. The trollness in this dungeon is unreal. Just say 2 Song of Time blocks with the crate and you'll make any Master Quest player shiver. I kind of agree that Master Quest should be ignored in this series. Much like the difficulty in Zelda 2 that isn't favored for the usual Zelda player, I think the trollness and puzzle challenges in this game can only be enjoyed by those who exclusively want that experience. The focus on Master Quest is the dungeons. However, if you enjoyed the challenge of Golden Skulltula hunting from Ocarina of Time, then the dungeons get fleshed out a lot more since Skulltula hunting is very challenging, very different, and very satisfying in this version. Finally, let me just say this game is weird with its logic. I mean, Lord Jabu Jabu's belly has cows in its walls. Likewise, get thinking outside of the box or this game will trap you in your own box with its puzzles. Definitely recommended for Ocarina of Time players who run on autopilot in the original game and want something different. I think the 3 masks are the coolest things about Majora's Mask. Hands down, no question. Yes, Goat is my top favorite boss in Majora's Mask. Any objections? I didn't think so. Getting the Fierce Deity mask was so disappointing to get. You sweat through blood and tears to get all of the masks only to get a mask that only works for boss battles. Seriously? It's a useless and impractical mask since the game is completed. Assembling the Frog Choir is the most tedious side quest in Majora's Mask. You have to go to 3 areas that are very far from each other and from the warp zones. Plus you have to go out of your way to kill 2 mini bosses in 2 temples. All that for a piece of heart. Not worth it. The bunny hood is easily the most practical mask outside of the 3 primary masks in Majora's Mask. Running faster will definitely get you places, and I hear a lot of Zelda players get this mask as soon as possible. I agree, it'll save you a lot of traveling time for dungeons and side quests. Go get it! Out of the 2 games, Oracle of Seasons being the brother game is easily the combat-oriented game of the 2. Its items are definitely more fast-paced and practical. Speaking of items, Oracle of Seasons definitely has the most unique items out of the series for those who have played this game. You have a magical boomerang that changes direction in mid-flight in real time, magnetic gloves that switches between positive and negative fields, a deadly slingshot that shoots in 3 directions at once, and a Rock's Cape, at which combined with Pegasus seeds makes Link jump a ludicrous distance. Wow, action-oriented indeed. I have heard from some Zelda fans that this story is the weakest of the series that does include a story. Why? Because there's no story. The bad guy gets the girl and you go save the girl. That's it. So if you have story expectations, prepare to be disappointed. It's all gameplay. A good few have said the rings are fun to collect if you're looking for a scavenger hunt adventure, but that the rings' powers themselves aren't that practical or useful. I highly agree. I hardly use rings in these 2 games. Many YouTubers have complimented the Sword and Shield maze for its balance of intense action and intense puzzles, representing each floor along with its symbology and music, making for one of the best dungeons in the series. Yep, let me on that crowded train. The last dungeon was god tiers of awesomeness. You will not hear too many Zelda players praise Lord Jabu Jabu's belly because of its insurmountable tediousness. While I do enjoy the dungeon because I like water and getting stumped with puzzles, I have to agree, it is really, really, really bad. Whoever goes through Dungeon 6 is in for a special treat from the game because you can go through the past and present versions of the dungeon. Oh yeah, that's a star quality from the game. It dropped my pants in disbelief my first time. Let's go for a combined games opinion. Do Koum and Kotake suck as bosses? Yes. Yes, I do. Without Z targeting or any proper aiming mechanic, it's a tedious hailstorm of a boss. I'm going to say it, and it's the popular opinion, but Oracle of Ages isn't for everyone. This is because it's brutal with its puzzles, coming off as tedious and discouraging to some Zelda players. Unless you have that puzzle fire billowing inside you and appreciate the extra thought the game puts in to challenge your mind, I give this one a skip. This is a small moment in the game, but I'm sure a lot of Zelda players will agree with me who did this. When you're heading for the 7th dungeon, you have the ability to swap time periods anytime. Okay, I have to admit, that is the strangest pace I've seen throughout the whole series. To time swap just for the sake of avoiding poisonous bubbles? The fact that 4 Swords is multiplayer mandatory is easily the worst part of 4 Swords. You can't play it. The final boss in this game is the worst final boss in all of Zelda history. Hurl up some bombs, swipe at it, and the second part won't do it any more justice. I agree with a lot of Zelda players that the satisfaction of going through the basic game just isn't worth it from the hype. It's only an hour long and doesn't have long to leave a memorable moment. Plenty have felt that disappointment from its short length. The Anniversary Edition pretty much hammered in the motherlode of all content. It extended the playtime to around 6 hours for casual players and 15 for completionists. Now that's a phenomenal deal. Like many, I do hesitate to call 4 Swords an official Zelda game. It's not talked about at all, the playtime is short, it's barred by requiring multiplayer, and the GBA tacked it on as a minigame to A Link to the Past. But also, like many, I do put it on my list of what games I prefer in the Zelda series when ranking them, probably because of tradition. Without any doubt, the dungeons are the funnest part about Wind Waker. The darker tones suit the cell shading very well in the game. Some popular votes love the sailing more, but I'm with another band of popular votes that think the dungeons make this game outstanding. You, Tingle. 3,184 rupees? I saved your ass. The least you could do is give me the damn Triforce charts. On a personal note, I only finished Wind Waker once because of this. I stop here after the dungeons are done when I replay it. Wind Waker is the most practical of its items in the 3D Zelda games. It continually makes use of all of Link's items, and it has the added benefit of Twilight Princess, of combining certain items to make some good secondary use out of some items. Medley is flat out adorable. Her appearance, bravery, adult-like behavior, and her traveling with you to the Dragon Roost Cavern and the Earth Temple makes her a memorable character. As for how you enjoy escorting her through the Earth Temple, some people like that, some don't. I'll leave that up to you. Unfortunately, Wind Waker stinks of slow-paced 3D Zelda game starter syndrome just like the other 4 3D Zelda games. This game's example is a slow, tedious stealth section. Nope, I am not a fan of it. 4 Swords Adventures is the most unmemorable Zelda game to date. I especially noticed this because I like to drink in the large variety of environments, and well, since you're going through them so quick, you won't remember anything after this game is done. The hardware limitations required for multiple players to play it is ridiculously bad, and a lot of it could have been prevented. To play, you need a Game Boy Advance and link cable for each new player. While I appreciate the ambition, this game would have been a lot more fun and accessible as a party game if it kept itself exclusively to the GameCube hardware itself. The village of the Blue Maiden and the graveyard are the hellholes of tedium in this game. Too much backtracking and too much of not knowing where to go will really generate some good rage quitting stories. Surprisingly, 4 Swords Adventures does have a huge variety of bosses, and a lot of them are interesting and engaging, and I agree with that. Common Zelda bosses praised in this game are Stone Argus, Helmrock King, the 2 big Poe bosses, Frostair, and Vaidi being the highlights. This is a big one. If you play this game alone, this game is likely to bore you. It is designed for a party experience, so if you go in wanting that grand single-player Zelda-like experience, you're pretty much stepping on the metal end of a rake for the wooden handle to hit you in your face for disappointment. The Temple of Droplets is one of the most immersive dungeons in the series for its claustrophobic atmosphere and daunting music. I'm right there with you. I didn't like the library fetch quest at all, and trying to recall where certain places were, I sometimes mixed them up with different houses and different areas, since the houses all look alike. Eventually got it done, but man, not fun. Since there were less dungeons in Minish Cap, 5 of them, there were a lot of heart pieces lying around the game world. Anyone get the feeling they were handing them out like candy on Halloween, along with the kinstone pieces? The 2 choo-choos look and act like retarded Wobbuffets from Pokemon. I don't think I've met a Zelda player that likes them. We'll come back to the Palace of Winds for the unpopular opinions list, but we can all agree that the place is one hell of a trek, right? What definitely stands out Twilight Princess with their bosses is that each of them have at least 2 versions of the fight, adding variety to their fights. The only exception is Virus, the second boss in the game, who only has 1. Other Zelda games are far less consistent with this and usually have only 1 version. The magic armor is the most useless heap of junk item I've ever seen or worked for in a Zelda game, especially since I hate rupee farming. You bet there will be blood from me. Another split opinion. There's a popular vote that says that situational items turn Zelda players off about Twilight Princess. Fair enough. To that I'd say I'm on the other side of the fence with another popular vote that cares less about items because as long as the dungeons are fantastic, I don't give a damn. Unfortunately, since Twilight Princess pushed all of its power into dungeons, the side quests leave a lot to be desired. I'm not complaining, but I found the side quests in other Zelda games to be a lot more thorough and enjoyable. I highly agree with this. If you aren't into cinematic heavy games like Metal Gear Solid or Kingdom Hearts, then it will be harder for you to enjoy Twilight Princess. If you prefer more story establishment to go with the gameplay, you'll be fine. If you prefer more gameplay to story, I'd be cautious with this Zelda title, especially with its slow start. I will come back to the Temple of the Ocean King for the unpopular opinions list, but I will agree that it could have done a lot more things right to satisfy the general Zelda player, especially the part where you have to rerun through this dungeon with limited checkpoints. I have heard a few comments that the music is underwhelming in Phantom Hourglass. Yeah, I have to agree with that. Only a couple of memorable tracks come to mind. Thankfully, I like the dungeon music though. That last part isn't a popular opinion. That part where you have to close the Nintendo DS in order to transfer something to the other screen, that was bloody cool! Now, are the temples underwhelming compared to the usual Zelda treatment? Yes, they certainly are. That's the popular opinion part. However, just like Majora's Mask that only has 4 dungeons, I'm more forgiving of these negative points from dungeons because the fun factor from other points in the game make up for it. I think the final boss is the most unmemorable in this series because of these reasons. It was a monster with no personality, showed up at the last second, it was a hand-holding final boss, wasn't different than any other Phantom Hourglass fight, and possession is getting pretty old for the Zelda series at this point. Is the Tower of Spirits better than the Temple of the Ocean King? Yeah, almost all Zelda players agree they mended all the problems carried over from Phantom Hourglass. Better save system, has no time limit, far less repetition, and the stealth is sacrificed for working with Zelda, a welcome addition. Do I agree that the train sections bog down the exploration and pad things out? Sure, so the game's enjoyment stems from whether you like trains or not. End of story. Fair point if you don't like them. Don't worry, I have my vehicle I don't like in the unpopular opinions list. Definitely the highlight of Spirit Tracks that stands it out from other Zelda games is that Zelda joins you for the entirety of your quest. It adds some awesome character development with the princess, and having a permanent partner you can control through the Tower of Spirits is pretty dang sweet. Now, one thing I hear get complimented often is that Spirit Tracks has an incredible learning curve. It starts you off easy and slow, and then everything gets satisfyingly harder. The puzzles, the combat, the train sections, the bosses, everything flows naturally with nothing that feels overwhelming, but yet challenges nicely. The end game in the Dark Realm is pretty awesome. Your train goes pretty stinking fast, you can play Pac-Man with some pellets and blow some trains to bits. Chasing the demon train in a boss fight is really a sight to see and be a part of. Then you got fighting the possessed Zelda and a pretty cool final boss. I think it's safe to say that some like the motion controls and some don't. So they're both popular opinions to say around these parts. As for me, I find it a little unnecessary because what I could do at a push of a button is now transformed into a convenient process to a more inconvenient process, which is not something I jump high up about. I hate Fi. I understand the part that she's analytical, which is something I could identify with her about, but the hardcore computer's attitude destroys the immersion of me taking her seriously as a person. I don't consider constant interruptions a fun time, and her voice is annoying. Gotta be honest here. Just like Moldor from A Link to the Past, I don't have problems with the imprisoned from Skyward Sword personally, but I do agree that taking a tedious boss like that and spreading him out for a bad time with 3 encounters, yeah, not a good idea. Easily one of the best features of Skyward Sword is marking stuff with your beacons. I adore this, since I'm bad with navigation. Plus having the red X's, and it made the exploration that much more fun and manageable, not having to worry about overlooking things. Now, despite that Skyward Sword is a controversial game, I still enjoyed a lot more positives from it that weighed out the negatives I mentioned, oddly enough. And strangely enough, a lot of fans who enjoy Skyward Sword actually had the same words as this. Ravio's bracelet is a really ambitious concept for Link Between Worlds. Who would have thought? Merging with walls. It adds a whole new dimension to the exploration, having to scan walls or corners to find some nifty secret areas. Getting the Maya Mice back is my top favorite side quest in Link Between Worlds. What made it so fun was their diverse set of locations, like finding some underwater, some were found in the walls, and some in caves. It was a good time and definitely stood out. One thing I prize Link Between Worlds for is its harder difficulty option. No offense, but Link is kind of overpowered in this game, and with his fast slashing of his sword and his powerful weapons in my opinion, so I agree adding the replayability of the harder difficulty definitely helped the game. I like the idea of a Zelda game with a magic meter that keeps refilling itself, giving you unlimited magic or ammo. It reminds me of the thrill of cheating I used to do in my retro games. I'm with you, it's awesome when a game breaks itself for the sake of fun. While I thought that Yuga in the story was kind of meh, actually I thought it was stupid, I loved the ending with the interaction between Hilda and Ravio with the insight of what good people are capable of turning to and desperation to what they'll do for their failed kingdom. The single player campaign in Triforce Heroes is a complete pain sometimes. While I appreciate that the developers put in something just in case no one was interested in multiplayer or couldn't be a part of it, the empty dummy mechanic is a drag at times, especially when trying to 100% this game. But do I agree that multiplayer has its bad days? Oh yes, especially when playing the game your first time because you come across an impatient group that expects you to know the game inside out. I seriously wish they added a filter option to find Zelda players who played the game for different reasons, like those who are completing it, their first time, etc. It would have been nice. Never have I been so uncomfortable with Link's design choices. There are some times where I think he's cute in a girl's outfit because he looks like one, and other times where it comes off as creepy cross-dressing. I said this before, but the padding in this game is probably at its max here in this game than any other Zelda game. There are 128 challenges in single player, another 128 in multiplayer, making for a total of 256. If you enjoy the game, which I did, it will be a good time. If you don't, and there will be some harrowing, tedious moments, don't do it. You'll die. It's nice that the game makes you share your life meter with multiplayer, as this discourages some trolling with online people. Besides, it would have been unbalanced if everyone had their own bars, as this would have encouraged heart hoarding, and I hate health hoarders. What stands Zelda out compared to every other series out there is that everyone has their own take on the series. This is because they're all consistently positive experiences across all of their games. It's less with talking about bugs or technical errors with other series, and more about your own personal interpretation and what you see and experience. What makes Zelda so enjoyable for everyone is its casual nature and accessibility, making it appeal to the younger audiences and encouraging them to try out the series. But also, at the same time, Zelda explores enough interesting, branching concepts in different games to appeal to the older players because it's a different adventure every time. What I enjoy from Zelda the most is its environments. To be honest, it was hard for me to warm up to Zelda with Ocarina of Time when I was younger because it didn't look fast-paced or engaging. So what eventually drew me in was realizing just how beautiful and expansive these worlds were compared to other series, and that's why I'm a fan of it today. Zelda is actually a lot harder to objectively criticize for its weaknesses than you think. For example, some will not mind the lackluster amount of dungeons in Majora's Mask because it's compensated for side quests, and others will. It is all down to subjective criticism. It's about what you like or dislike from a Zelda game, not from what the world likes or dislikes about it. I think it's safe to say that even though we try to love Zelda as much as we can, we usually have that one game where we try as hard as we can to like it, but you just can't. But we want to. You feel my pain, right? Link Between Worlds. Even though I said so many good things about you, why? Let me like you. Oh, I give up. What are some of your popular Zelda opinions?